I'm Gianna Melendez.
Hi, I'm Marjani Hutchinson.
We are doing the movie Assassination Nation. The choice of film was kind of easy for us because it has a lot of layers. We have topics ranging from coming out, the queer identity, and just diversity, I guess, and how things can be more sexualized. So I think it would be a good thing to talk about in this podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. Marjani, we can start off.
So I could talk about Lily and the principal's office and how she got told on about like what she was drawing in her journal. Which it's not an explicit photo, I would say, but in high school it could be seen as explicit just because, there are minors in high school, even though she's 18. I feel like it could be seen as, nudity. But in the real world it would be just seen as artwork. Like it wouldn't be thought much of oh, this is a bad image, you shouldn't be drawing this. You're a kid essentially, which she's not. And I just feel like the principal saw it as she can't draw this stuff.
So with this being said, the film has a lot of ways to over-sexualize these girls, these minors at that, and these women. Also, with that being said, was it done purposely? Do you think?
I don't think it was done purposely.
Like in the director's way of showing that, hey, this is what's happening, this is something that's a natural occurrence. I'm going to dress these girls these way, kind of in a male gaze perspective.
Okay.
But does he mean it in an educational way?
Okay, I see how he does it purposely. So in a way, you know how, they talked about, the drawings and stuff. He did it in a way where Lily's monologue, she kind of explained the way, like, how she viewed her artwork and how it wasn't supposed to be seen as a nude or explicit image. Like, this is her just showing art. And it shouldn't be seen as anything more than that. But yeah, the director, which is a guy, and I feel like the way that Lily and some of the women and girls are dressed are more on the, showing skin side things.
Revealing.
Very revealing. Yeah. And I feel like he does that on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, like you said, Lily, the way that she explained her art, like, in that principal office scene, I kind of seen it as a way to be like, hey, we started this film off super sexually, and, these girls are kind of dressing a certain way, and this is how we kind of depict and view the male gaze. But this is actually why. Like, the way that she spoke about women and their bodies as a young female shows, like, the way that she just saw raw beauty and nudity as what it is. And I think we see little pickets of that throughout the film. Like, even, like, the way that she speaks about things with her parents over-sexualize those things, or see the queer people as, like, nasty pedophiles and, like, all those types of things. Like, with the principal and the pictures of his children. Because they saw that nude photograph of his child as something that is sexualized, and that he had it in that type of manner.
And I feel like Lily's parents, they didn't really understand. They probably won't ever understand it because the generation they grew up is older and they see it more, see more conservative views and just old school views of, the world.
I think another thing here is, like, how strong the society's perspective affects another one's perspective. Like, oh, if everyone else is thinking this way, then we have to think this way. Right. Like, when Lily was like, what about that photo of me as a 2-year-old on the chimney?
Yep.
They didn't see it that way. I felt like they were a little taken aback from it because they're like, oh, well, everyone is saying that he's a pedophile, so he's a pedophile. Right. And how does that affect the queer community? Like, this person's gay, so, like, whatever, and, like, we should call them the F slur, and that's something that's fine, or, like, we should dress the person wrong and give them the wrong pronouns. Like, how much does the society's perspective and negative hate actually affect everyone's day-to-day life, even though sometimes they don't realize that they're on the other side without realizing.
I feel like when Lily's, well, not when her nudes got leaked by the hacker, people didn't know it was her, and she was afraid that people were gonna find out, and they did find out because her boyfriend literally forced people to hold her down and show her birthmark, and then he exposed her. And the scene where she came home and she didn't want to tell her parents that, they were asking her if those pictures were her, and they kicked her out. I felt like that was it really hurt her because, she knows how her parents were
and she their perspectives.
She really didn't want to show that. She didn't want to tell them. And
I think it's very interesting to see how Lily spoke on nudity and the perspective of it. But when her nudes got leaked and her messages got leaked, it kind of resulted in, like, her to feel like sick to her stomach, basically. But the reason behind that, I think, is like, to the point she got groomed, and we know that.
Yeah.
He over-sexualized a young girl who really didn't have a real relationship. It was definitely something that shouldn't have happened. But is he making her think of her body in a certain way? Like, to the point where she has to address him, calling him these names and, like, acting a certain way to get his attention.
Right.
And stuff like that. Or, like, when she's with her boyfriend, it's kind of like, oh, well, you don't do this to me, or, like, this, and this happens. And, like, I like recording this with you because I feel confident in my body.
Yeah.
I think we see those two things in the two different relationships that she has with them, because one is wrong and one is more validated. Not saying he's a great man either, but one is, right.
Right. Listen,
yeah.
Not really, but
but we kind of see how, easy it is to, see something one way, but be convinced of another. I think another thing in this film is, like, kind of forcing people to come out. Like, is that, like, a common thing? Like, is that just something that happens all the time?
I feel like it definitely does, like, especially in, like, not in, like, the northern part of America, but probably, like, the southern part, just because I feel like it's way more conservative, obviously, down there. And it, definitely happens in the world, not just in America, but, like, in other places.
Yeah, of course. I know that somewhere in, like, the southern east area, like, East Asian area, I believe, that there's, like, laws in some areas that you have to come out and you have to tell us if you're queer or not, and then, like, there's places that transition you into the opposite gender for you could still be with that partner. There's, like, a lot of things. And I feel like a lot of people don't realize how actually common it is. Like, your messages getting leaked in this film, that's outing people.
That's scary.
It's scary. Like, maybe some people weren't ready for that. And, like, maybe some people in this case scenario in the movie did that, like Diamond. Like, we see him go from hiding Bex to probably being with her and, like, standing up for her. But it's at the same time, it's like, when he was ready or when it was the right time for him, it would have happened, whether it was with Bex or not.
Well, also, like, when it did come out, they beat him up. Like, that's a fear that people have literally in the real world, and it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah, you see these kids in this film, like, partying freely and doing this and this and this, and, they probably think, like, oh, Bex is transgender, she's around, we're not homophobic, we do this, and this, she's kind of hot. Until it comes to the point where jealousy comes in and anger and embarrassment comes in with these leakings, where it gets to physical violence, which comes to terms with internalized homophobia.
On internalized homophobia, when the mayor's, stuff got leaked, he was, cross-dressing and
having sexual encounters with men.
And he didn't know how to handle that. He was just like, what did I do? What did I do? He went to not speak at the press conference because obviously he ended up doing what he did.
Off himself.
Yes.
Yes.
And you know, that's just another way that people like deal with. Well, obviously they can't deal with, you know, coming out or just being comfortable in their bodies. Well, they don't have the courage to do it. And just like how Bex was talking about it in the pool, like she didn't have any sympathy for the mayor, but Lily was trying to, you know, trying to get her to see his side, I guess. And say that, you know, he didn't really have the courage and that's why he did what he did. But, you know, people.
Yeah. He still stood for the wrong things. And if he were still alive and if he didn't get leaked, would that still be the case? Or would it come out eventually from him? I think that's something really interesting to look at. I don't know, I think this movie shows just like a lot of perspectives from different areas. Like with like hypersexualizing these girls or the things that they do or the relationships that are in this film. Does that kind of put in perspective what happens in everyday life or other films? I think another interesting thing in this film was that Bex was always, always, always properly addressed. They might have insulted her. They might have said rude things. But even with the people attacking her and trying to hang her, they said she, her, she, her, she, her, which is the proper term for her. I think it's interesting. I think this kind of lies within the internalized homophobia as well, and how that combines so many people. Who was it that complimented her? Diamond's friend that did that. I just think it's interesting, you know, like compliments her, he addresses her correctly, but then it's like, but we need to hang her because she slept with Diamond. Right. And Diamond doing that, that's, you know, that makes him a homosexual, and then this is a homosexual relationship, and that's not right, and this, and this, but you complimented her, you obviously enjoyed some type of her presence, and you respect her enough to address her correctly. Right. So I think that's really interesting to look at it from like the internalized homophobia perspective that we mentioned, and to also look at it as how easy it is to properly address somebody by their pronouns. We have somebody here, though yes, this is fictional, right? But we have people here still doing hatred things to somebody, or even beforehand, just kind of letting them exist in the world that they're in, but still addressing them properly. Like, how hard, genuinely, is it to just not let somebody be who they are? Truly.
I don't think it was hard at all. Yeah. And I definitely feel like the film, obviously, it spoke to that. And in the real world, you know, people will go out of the way and not do it on purpose because they feel like, well, why should I have to? But I don't know. I feel like if they did do that, like show like by not, you know, saying the correct pronouns, that would, you know, touch on real world like problems and like how it is to be transgender in real life.
Yeah. So would you consider this movie a queer film? Like me personally, I think this film could reach a lot of different areas and communities and audiences. Like, you know, we focus on like kind of feminism here, and you know, like we have 4 women who are fighting for themselves and accomplishing things, and like being 4 main characters from different backgrounds and different choices that led them to who they are today. And I think that's something that could reach group of women.
Yeah,
very, that would want to watch
like, has
this
a
film.
Very nice feminist view.
Yes, exactly. And then there's also the queer community. LGBTQIA plus. I think there's a lot of representation, whether it's characters in the background or it being Bex or like people you know,
or just
crushing
like
on each other
acting.
together, how they're acting, their actions, you know, whether it's negative or positive, it was all, you know, for those characters done in a queer aspect. So I think that reaches that audience. And then also, though it's not the largest amount of diversity, people of color in this film.
There are.
Yes. We don't just have like 4 white girls coming in and like saving the day.
There's a lot of main character people of color. Yeah. And they have a lot of lines. And that's something that should be addressed and, you know, relevant. I would say that the 4 girls in the movie, it shows that, you know, they have a lot of trust and respect for each other, like they're best friends. And I feel like that's also important in this movie because it shows that there's a strong sense of community between one another.
They're committed to each other, and you know they definitely are there for each other when needed. Even when everything came out about Lily, we still see the women supporting each other, or like when they disagree, it wasn't like a little cat fight, like how like people with like a male gaze perspective would see it, or like, you know, just like little things here and there where it's just like these are just girls genuinely enjoying their time together.
This film has a lot of audiences. It still has a main character, which is Lily. Yeah. And the main point is that they think Lily's the hacker. Yep. And, you know, everybody's trying to kill her.
Well, obviously, yes, Lily is our main character, but she just has like a lot going. Like, she has a lot of things to kind of beat and get over, other than the fact that people are after her. Right. Just in the beginning of the film, she has like this boyfriend who's like perfectly fine with like over sexualizing her until it comes to not involving him. Right. You know, like, oh, you're hot and you're sexy for doing this, but like when it's not with me or when it's like out in the public, like you're a whore. Slut. You know? Yeah. Like, you're a slut. Like, you know, like that's how he would address her, literally. Like with no question, no doubt.
Especially when, you know, the stuff with her got leaked, and I mean nobody knew it was her, but until he said something, you know, that was insane.
It's and then like, you know, like her getting groomed. That's also something that she has to go through, which is terrible, and it's something. And like her parents, they obviously have like homophobic tendencies. They are
very old world,
old school type of people. So you know, she overcomes those things where I understand her as the main character, and we also see like Bex's story in a way that's like, we know she's a side character, but like generally like her story was so interesting. Yeah. Like they were in the pool, I think they had like this conversation about the mayor that we had mentioned before, right? And then, you know, like Lily kind of defending him? Yeah. You know, she's kind of defending him, but at the same time Bex is like, you know, I live this way and I deal with the consequences. Right. Like, long story short, that's what she's saying. Yeah. And, you know, and then Lily's like, you know, but we still should kind of, there's no reason to not feel sorry for the predicament that he's in. Or, like, the fact that he had to die, or, like, you know, anything like that. But, it just shows the real struggles that it comes with being in the queer community. There's many, many, many people who don't ever come out or come out very late in life because of the fears and things that happen to them. There's people who kill themselves over this stuff, which we see in the film. You know, it's very sad.
I feel like this movie can spread awareness through, you know, like how Lily was being groomed, obviously. Being private with, you know, your photos. Trust people that you know, send them to, or don't even don't take notes. Don't do it at all. Just because, you know, it's dangerous. And this movie is obviously fictional, and, you know, it got, you know, very dragged out, you know, the violence and everything, because that wouldn't happen in real life, hopefully. But you know, just to, you know, take your privacy a little more seriously.
I think ways of spreading awareness is just kind of, you know, like this film is kind of horror thriller based because of the anxiety and the anxious feelings that you get watching these characters be put in these like scary, horrible predicaments. I think that this kind of shows like how scary is it to be a woman alone. Lily had no family anymore, no one to protect her. She had to fight for herself. How scary is that? How common is that to have that fear?
How easily
it is.
Her family turned her back.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
It's like Orbex, being a transgender woman, like being who she is, was still getting beat and threatened with her life because of the love that she had for somebody, because it was seen as a very like homosexual, very wrong relationship between her and Diamond. Or being somebody of color. How easily does that make you a target? What was the true reasons behind the principal's leaks? Like, why was he the second target,
Also brings awareness to, well, I'm pretty sure you said this before, but when the mayor killed himself, like that happens every day. To people that just are under a lot of pressure.
Rates for mental illness, the queer community, like a lot of things like that, and even just being forced to come out. Not saying that the principal was a great person, like we said, he's not, but it's like, was he in a headspace or place for him to be who he actually was? And that's a big thing, because people, for the most part, are forced to come out, which is not a fun thing, like we said, and it's hard. It's hard. I think this movie definitely touches like a lot of bases when it comes to stuff like that. So I think it was really nice to see how much was actually spread out, and how much we can actually see with diversity and queernesses and the cause and effects of it.
Yeah, and I think definitely the hacker brought out a lot of things to light. What I really thought of this film is that, I don't know, I feel like in the end I feel like this movie was really more like woman empowerment. It's not like, I know this is like a LGBTQ, film class, queer film. But it didn't really focus on like the
only the queer community.
Like it gave me more just women's empowerment, feminist, especially at the end where, there was a whole bunch of, girls just coming up behind the four main characters and Lily. And, against everybody else. So that's what the film gave me. It was good. Yeah, it was
I think it was good for it not to just solely base on the queer community and to use this in the class, because so much of that also involves so many other things, and there's so many different people in the queer community, and they all go through different things. Everybody's different. So I think it was a great film for this class, and very educational in different ways, and I think it just spreads awareness on its own matter depending on who you are for different reasons. And yeah, genuinely enjoyed it. Great film. I hope you enjoyed this little podcast. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.